A frail old man selling his wife's jewelry just to make it through another day. Could one act of kindness turn his struggle into hope? A man who had once given his youth to serve this country, now standing quietly in the shadows of forgotten memories, but behind every faded locket, every trembling hand, there was a story that still burned bright. And when Anna, with her gentle smile, asked the right questions, everything was revealed and a journey of kindness began. One simple video shared across social media, a wave of compassion swept in, turning one veteran's quiet struggle into a testament that every quiet act of service is repaid one way or another, and kindness never truly fades away. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The small town of Pleasant Ridge woke each morning with the sun. It wasn't a place that rushed here. Life moved slow and gentle, like the quiet drift of autumn leaves along the cracked sidewalks. In the heart of that town stood Hudson's Pawn and Loan, a weathered little shop, its green wooden sign faded by decades of Texas summers and hard winters. The door creaked when you pushed it open, and the bell above jingled a tired greeting. Anna Hudson worked behind the glass counter, where necklaces end. Rings glimmered in the soft yellow light. She had a careful way of moving, like she'd learned to listen more than she spoke. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her eyes held a softness that could melt even the hardest worries. She'd grown up in Pleasant Ridge, watching her father run the pawn shop with quiet dignity. Now, years later, she found herself standing where he once stood, offering what she could to folks who walked in with more troubles than treasures. Most days were the same. A farmer trading in an old watch for gas money, a young couple pawning a family heirloom to make rent. The door would chime and Anna would nod, offering no judgment, only calm understanding. But then there was Walter Grant. He'd been coming by for months, always at the same time, just before lunch, moving slow and deliberate, like an old clock winding down. Walter was 91, though he still carried himself with the faint shadow of the pilot he once was. His shoulders stooped under the weight of years, his hands trembling as he set down a worn velvet pouch on the counter. Inside, always the same small bits of jewelry, tiny pieces of another life. They were his wife's. Anna knew that without asking. She saw the way his thin fingers lingered on the gold band before he let it go, like he was saying goodbye to a memory he couldn't bear to lose. Walter rarely spoke, just a nod and a tired smile, and then he would shuffle out, his cane tapping a slow beat on the tiled floor. Anna always watched him leave, her heart twisting a little tighter each time. There was something about the way he moved, a kind of quiet struggle, like he was fighting a battle no one else could see. She saw it in the slope of his shoulders, in the way his eyes never quite met hers. It wasn't just the weight of old bones, it was the weight of an empty house, of nights spent listening to the hollow quiet where laughter used to live. Anna understood that kind of silence. It was the loneliest sound in the world on a cool Monday morning. Walter came in again. The autumn wind had turned sharp, and he clutched his coat tighter around his thin frame. Anna offered him a gentle smile, one she hoped would bridge the distance between them. "Morning, Mr. Grant," she said softly. He nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line, and set the pouch down on the counter like it was something fragile. Anna took it with care, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. Inside was a silver locket, its edges worn smooth by time. Anna turned it over slowly, feeling the weight of it in her palm. It was a beautiful thing, but she could see it had been loved long before it ever sat in her hand. "I'll give you a fair price, sir," she said. Walter gave a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He looked past her as if seeing a place far beyond the shop's dusty windows. Anna moved through the motions, writing out the ticket, counting out the bills, but her mind was somewhere else, caught on the sadness in Walter's eyes. She couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just here for money. When he turned to leave, Anna spoke again, her voice low and gentle. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Walter paused, his hand resting on the door. He shook his head, slow and deliberate, and stepped out into the cold light of day. Anna watched him go, the bell's soft jingle trailing after him like a sigh. The shop fell quiet again, but the image of Walter lingered in her mind. She wondered what it must feel like to let go of pieces of your past, one small treasure at a time. Could a single conversation spark a wave of change? She spent the afternoon dusting shelves and polishing glass, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Walter. She thought about the stories hidden in the lines of his face, the quiet courage it took to walk through that door time after time. Anna knew the world wasn't always kind to men like Walter, men who'd once soared above the clouds and now lived in the shadows of forgotten days. As the sun dipped low, Anna closed up the shop and walked out into the gathering dusk. The air smelled of rain and old leaves, and she pulled her coat tighter against the chill. She thought of Walter's hands, thin, weathered, still steady enough to hold on to hope. That night she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, the soft glow of the lamp casting long shadows on the worn wood. She thought about the small kindnesses that could mend a broken day. She thought about Walter and how sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to ask for help. Anna didn't know yet how she would help him, but she knew she couldn't just stand by and watch him fade away. In her heart, she understood. That a man like Walter deserved more than a polite nod and a few dollars for a locket. He deserved to be seen, to be honored, to be reminded that his story still mattered. And in that quiet kitchen, with the wind whispering against the window panes, Anna made herself a promise she would find a way for Walter Grant, for the man who had given so much and asked for so little. She would find a way. The next morning, Anna opened the shop a little earlier than usual. She brewed a fresh pot of coffee and wiped down the counter. Her thoughts still lingering on Walter Grant, she told herself it was just habit, just another day in Pleasant Ridge, but deep down she knew it was more. When Walter came in, she greeted him with a smile, careful not to let him see how much she worried. He nodded, the same tired smile on his lips, and set a small brooch on the counter. Anna picked it up gently, feeling the weight of history in her palm. "Do you mind if I ask about this one?" she said softly. Walter hesitated, his eyes flickering down to his worn boots. "It belonged to my wife," he murmured, his voice gravelly. "She wore it on our wedding day." Anna's breath caught for a moment. She looked up at Walter, really looked at him, at the lines around his eyes and the quiet pride in his voice. He wasn't just a customer, he was a man carrying the memories of a lifetime. In every small thing he let go. "You were in the service, weren't you?" she asked gently. Walter's eyes met hers then, a glimmer of something sparking in the gray. "Air Force," he said. "Flew bombers in Korea and Vietnam." There was a pause, heavy but not uncomfortable. Anna nodded slowly, letting the weight of his words settle in. "My fiancé, Eric," she said quietly, "was a firefighter for 20 years. He knows what it's like to give everything you have." Walter's expression softened. "Firefighters," he said almost to himself, "another kind of soldier." Anna smiled faintly. She felt the truth of that in her bones. Eric had been her rock, her quiet strength when the world felt too loud. That night, she told Eric about Walter. They sat together at the kitchen table, the soft glow of the lamp painting warm light across the worn wood. Eric listened carefully, his brow furrowed, his hand wrapped around hers. "He comes in every week," Anna said, her voice hushed. "He sells pieces of his wife's jewelry, but it's more than that. I think he's selling pieces of his heart." Eric squeezed her hand gently. "He's a veteran," he said. "He deserves more than that." Anna nodded. "I want to help," she said simply. Eric didn't hesitate. "Then let's do it," he said. "Whatever it takes." The next few days were a quiet flurry of purpose. Anna and Eric set aside small amounts of money, tips from the shop, spare change from Eric's second job. They didn't have much, but they had enough heart to share. They reached out to a few friends, explaining Walter's story in soft, careful words. People gave what they could, a few dollars here, a small bill there. No one asked for recognition, they just wanted to help. In the end, Anna counted it out in careful stacks. $1, $300, not a fortune, but maybe enough to ease the weight pressing down on Walter's shoulders. The morning she planned to give it to him, Anna woke up early. She pressed her best dress, tied her hair back in a simple ribbon, and took a deep breath before stepping into the crisp fall air. Eric kissed her forehead, a silent promise in the curve of his lips. At the shop, she set the small envelope on the counter and waited. Walter came in just after 11, his steps a little slower than before. Anna's heart thudded in her chest as he approached. She smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Grant," she said. He gave her a weary smile in return, setting down a thin gold bracelet. Anna took it with care, her fingers brushing his. "Mr. Grant," she said softly, "there's something I'd like to give you today." She reached under the counter and brought out the envelope, her hands trembling just a little. Walter frowned, puzzled, his brow creasing in confusion. Anna pushed it toward him, her voice low and steady. "Some friends and we put this together for you," she said. "It's not much, but we wanted you to know that you're not alone." Walter's hands trembled as he took the envelope. He opened it slowly, the thin paper rustling in the stillness. When he saw the bills inside, his breath caught. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just looked at Anna, his eyes shining in the dim light. "I don't understand," he said, his voice cracking. Anna smiled, her own eyes glistening. "You've given so much," she said. "It's time someone gave back to you." Walter's shoulders shook just once, like a man trying to stand tall in a storm. "I can't accept this," he whispered. Anna reached across the counter, her hand resting over his. "You can," she said gently, "and you will." Eric had set up his phone that morning, propped it on the old cash register with a quiet purpose. He filmed the moment Anna handed Walter the envelope, the way his hands shook and his eyes filled with tears. It wasn't for show, it was to remind the world that kindness still mattered. They uploaded the video that night, a simple caption beneath it. "Sometimes the smallest gifts carry the greatest meaning." Anna didn't expect much, she just wanted to share a story, a moment of grace in a world that too often forgot what that looked like. But the world saw it. The video spread like wildfire, shared by strangers who recognized the quiet power of a simple act of kindness. Could one video ignite a town's compassion? And I watched the numbers climb in the days that followed, the views ticking higher, the comments pouring in, messages of love, of gratitude, of people saying they needed to see that reminder that one person can make a difference. Anna and Eric didn't do it for the views, they did it for Walter, for the man who had once flown above the clouds. and now stood humbly on the worn tile floor of a pawn shop. As the days passed, Anna noticed a change in Walter. He still came in with the same slow steps, the same careful smile, but there was a light in his eyes now, a spark of something that had almost been lost. Anna knew it wasn't about the money, it was about the dignity it gave him, the quiet message that he wasn't invisible, that his story still mattered. And in the quiet hours of the evening, when Anna sat beside Eric with her head on his shoulder, she thought about all the small ways we can hold each other up, how the world could change, not with grand gestures, but with one small act of kindness at a time. In the days that followed, Anna watched the video's numbers rise with quiet amazement. It had started as a simple gesture, one small act of kindness shared from her heart, but somehow it had struck a chord in thousands of strangers. The views climbed past 1 million, then 10 million. People from all over the country watched Walter's trembling hands, the tears in his eyes, the way Anna reached across the counter to steady him. It was more than a story, it was a reminder that kindness could still matter. In a world that moved too fast, Anna read the comments late into the night, her heart aching and swelling with every word. "You've restored my faith in people," one wrote. "Thank you for showing us what true service looks like." Another said, "It was humbling and overwhelming all at once." Anna never imagined her quiet little shop in Pleasant Ridge would become a beacon for so many. She just knew that Walter's story deserved to be heard. And then the messages turned into something more. People began asking how they could help. They wanted to do more than just watch, they wanted to give. Eric, ever practical, suggested they start a fundraiser. "It's a way for folks to be part of this," he said, his voice low and earnest. Anna hesitated, but deep down she knew he was right. They set up a page, simple and honest: "Support Walter Grant, a veteran who deserves to be remembered." They shared his story, how he'd served his country with pride, how he'd spent years quietly selling away memories to care for the woman he loved. Within hours, the donations poured in: $5, $10, some gave more than they could spare. Moved by the quiet dignity in Walter's tired eyes, Anna watched the numbers climb, her breath catching in her throat. $1,000, $10,000, more than she ever dreamed possible. Each time she refreshed the page, she thought of Walter, of the way his hands had trembled as he counted out coins for a can of soup, of how he'd stood so straight in her shop, even when the weight of the world seemed to bow him low. When the total reached $100,000, Anna called Eric at work, her voice shaking. "Can you believe this?" she whispered. Eric just laughed softly. "I can," he said, "because good people still exist." The campaign didn't stop there. By the end of the week, it had grown beyond anything they could have imagined. $400,000, then nearly $450,000. The number itself was staggering, but what mattered more to Anna was what it represented: a chorus of voices saying, "You are not alone." When she told Walter, she invited him to the shop before opening hours. He shuffled in, his eyes wary but curious. Anna poured him a cup of coffee, her hands trembling just a little. "Mr. Grant," she said, her voice catching, "there's something you need to see." She pulled up the fundraiser page on her old laptop, turning the screen so he could read the numbers for himself. Walter's breath hitched as he stared, his lips parted, but no words came. His hand went to his chest, his thin shoulders shaking as the truth of it settled. "And they did this for me," he whispered finally. Anna nodded, her own throat too tight to speak. "For you, Walter," she said softly, "for your service, for the love you've given, for the man you still are." Walter sat back, his eyes glistening. For a moment, he was silent, lost in the swirl of disbelief and gratitude. Then he let out a slow, shaky breath. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said. Anna reached across the table, laying her hand over his. "You deserve it," she said simply, "every dollar. Every word of kindness, it's yours." For a long moment, they sat in the quiet shop, the soft hum of the coffee machine, the only sound outside. The world carried on, cars passing, birds calling in the autumn light. But in that small, warm room, something profound had taken root. Later that day, Walter came back to see Anna again. He looked different somehow, like a man who'd been given permission to breathe deep for the first time in years. He carried a small photo album in his trembling hands. "I want to show you something," he said, his voice softer than usual. Anna took the album and opened it slowly. Inside, black and white photographs of a young pilot and his bride, smiles wide, eyes bright with the promise of forever. "That was us," Walter said, his voice steady. 65 years ago, my wife Margaret, she was the light of my life." Anna flipped through the pages, each image a testament to a life lived with devotion and quiet heroism. She could see it in the way Walter looked at Margaret, like she was the only thing that ever truly mattered. As they reached the last page, Walter paused. There was a single photograph there, a car old and battered but still proud, a 1994 Ford Mustang gleaming in the sun. "I bought it for her," Walter said quietly, "back when I still had 2 good legs and a little money to spare. It was her dream car. We used to take it out on Sunday drives, just the two of us in the wind." He looked up then, his eyes bright with something Anna couldn't name. "I always wanted to fix it. Up again, he said, give it back to her like it was brand new, but you know how life gets away from you. Anna felt her chest tighten, she thought of all the little dreams people put aside, of how easy it was to forget what truly mattered. She reached across the counter, her hand warm over his. You'll do it now, she said softly, we'll make sure of it. Walter's lips trembled, but he managed to smile. For her, he whispered, for the woman who gave me everything, and in that small, quiet shop in Pleasant Ridge, Anna felt the weight of what they'd done, not just the money, not just the numbers on a screen, but the way 1,000 strangers had come together to lift up one man, to remind him and the world that no one had ever truly forgotten. That night, as the sun dipped low, and the first stars blinked awake, Anna sat with Eric on the old porch swing. The air smelled of wood smoke and hope. They didn't say much, just watched the sky turn from gold to deep indigo. Do you think he'll fix up that Mustang? Eric asked quietly. Anna smiled, her head resting against his shoulder. I know he will, she said, because now he has something he hasn't had in a long time. Eric turned to her, a question in his eyes. And what's that? Anna's smile widened just a little, her eyes soft. Belief, she said simply, belief that tomorrow can still be good. The following weeks unfolded with a quiet, steady purpose. Walter didn't rush, he moved at the careful pace of a man who knew each step forward was a blessing. Anna watched as he worked with a local mechanic, a young veteran named Caleb, who refused to take a dime in labor. Together, they fussed over the Mustang in the small workshop at the edge of town, their laughter echoing across the cracked concrete floor. The old car, once covered in dust and rust, began to shine again like a promise being kept. Anna stopped by whenever she could. She brought coffee and sandwiches and sometimes just sat on the curb, her eyes bright with quiet wonder. She'd never seen Walter look so alive. He told her once with a shy smile that working on that car felt like holding his memories in his hands. It's more than steel and paint, he said, it's the story of our Sundays, the hum of the open road, the way she laughed when the wind tangled her hair. Anna understood. She understood that this was more than a restoration, it was a testament to everything Walter and Margaret had shared. The day the Mustang was finally done, Walter asked Anna to come by the shop. When she arrived, he stood beside the car in a clean blue shirt, his hands trembling just slightly at his sides. The Mustang gleamed in the autumn light, every curve and edge polished to a mirror's shine. Margaret stood beside him, her frail hand resting on the hood, her eyes wet with wonder. She turned to Walter with a smile that seemed to light up the whole room, and for a moment, Anna saw them as they must have been decades ago, young and fearless, with the whole world ahead of them. Walter took Margaret's hand, his eyes soft and sure. This was always yours, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And now it's yours again. Margaret just nodded, her lips trembling into a smile, and in that smile, Anna saw every unspoken promise between them. She saw a lifetime of love, of sacrifice, of quiet heroism that no amount of money could ever buy. When they slid into the Mustang's worn leather seats, Walter glanced back at Anna. Thank you, he said simply. It was all he needed to say, all she needed to hear. Anna watched them drive away, the low rumble of the engine fading into the gentle hush of falling leaves. She stood there in the golden light of afternoon, her heart swelling with a kind of joy she hadn't known she was missing. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. The fundraiser had ensured that Walter and Margaret would have enough to live comfortably. No more selling away memories to make ends meet, no more silent battles fought alone in the dark. But the real gift was something deeper. It was the look in Walter's eyes, no longer tired, no longer waiting for the world to pass him by. It was the laughter that had found its way back into his voice, the quiet pride in his posture as he guided the Mustang back to the road where he and Margaret had once driven, hand in hand. In the days that followed, Anna thought often about how small acts can ripple outward in ways we never expect. A smile, a warm word, a hand reaching out in the quiet. She had seen how those small gestures could change everything. One afternoon, as she stood behind the counter at Hudson's Pawn and Loan, she watched the door open again. A young man in worn jeans stepped inside, his eyes darting nervously to the shelves lined with dusty treasures. Anna greeted him with that same gentle smile, the one she'd offered Walter so many times, because she knew now more than ever that you never know what burden someone carries, or what quiet heroism might be hidden behind their weary eyes. Eric came in later that day, leaning on the counter with a tired grin. He'd been working extra shifts at the firehouse, but he never missed a chance to see her. He reached across the glass, his fingers brushing hers. You're quiet today, he said softly. Anna just smiled, a light in her eyes. I was just thinking, she said, about how kindness, it doesn't just fix things, it grows things. Eric nodded, understanding. He always did. That evening they walked home together as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Pleasant Ridge was quiet in the way that small towns are, gentle, unhurried, full of stories carried in every creak of porch steps and every echo of laughter down a narrow street. Anna glanced up at the sky, the first stars beginning to peek through the deepening blue. She thought of Walter and Margaret, their laughter carried on the evening breeze. She thought of how a single act of compassion had sparked a fire that warmed not just their home, but an entire community's heart. And in that gentle twilight, Anna understood something she'd always known deep down, that in the end, it isn't about the grand gestures or the bright lights, it's about the quiet moments, the silent promises, the way one heart can Reach for another and say, "You are seen, you are not alone." As they reached the old oak that marked their front yard, Eric paused, pulling her close. "Anna," he said softly, his voice low and sure, "you've made this town better just by being you." She leaned her head against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath the worn denim of his shirt. "Maybe," she whispered, "but it's all of us together, isn't it? That's how we make the world a little kinder." Eric smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Yeah," he said, "it is." In the distance, Anna thought she could hear the Mustang's low purr, the gentle hum of memory and promise. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the crisp air, the faint scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, and when she opened them again, the world felt softer somehow, full of possibility, full of grace. Walter Grant's story wasn't just his anymore, it belonged to everyone who had paused to listen, who had seen a weary veteran and remembered the price he'd paid. It belonged to every soul who had chosen in that fleeting moment to believe in the power of kindness. And as the stars blinked awake over Pleasant Ridge, Anna knew that somewhere out there in the quiet night, Walter was smiling, not the tired smile he used to wear, but a real one, bright and strong and sure, a smile that said, "I'm here, I'm whole, and I am loved," because in the end, that's what it was all about. The small acts that stitch a broken world back together, the gentle reminders that even the softest voice can echo across 1,000 hearts, and the promise that no matter how far we drift, there will always be someone waiting to guide us home in our darkest moments. Kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition, some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.